Shadowverse Worlds Beyond is one of the worst rated games on Steam. Now the question is, does it deserve it? No, it doesn't. But I do think there's validity to player frustrations in regards to Shadowverse's economy. For the uninitiated, Shadowverse Worlds Beyond has been review bombed since release due to player sentiment that it's too expensive. The biggest offenders of this criticism being the quintupling of the cost to buy packs via earned rupees and the change in liquefying your cards for vials. That is that you can no longer liquefy cards until you have a full playset. These are two separate issues, one of which I think is more of an offender than the other, so we'll get one out of the way before talking about the other. In regards to the pack price, while they are 5 times more expensive now, the entire economy has shifted to provide more rupees in kind. You have the daily free pack, the 3 daily missions, park chests, the weekend tournaments, and that doesn't even include any additional special events ongoing, as well as the battle pass, and all of these systems do both in providing rupees and vials. So while on the optics side, I do think side games failed to convey that information clearly to new players so that it's not such a whiplash on first look. And trust me, their infinite menus do not help in that department. I don't think the issue is inherently based around how many packs we open, which even then you're actually opening a pretty significant amount of packs if you just go through all the play-oriented systems. So on the rupee side, sure, it's more expensive, but when you account for all of the systems, it's actually not that bad, especially when you include the pity that every 10 packs you're getting a legendary. On the topic of legendaries though, this is where we shift into the vials component of the conversation and where I think more of the underlying issues kind of surface. Out of the gate, you just get less vials for liquefying your cards, specifically with silvers, which now provide 20 vials instead of 50. This is the biggest difference in terms of providing players vials to craft the cards they need. It is now over 2 times harder just based on this change alone. The biggest hindrance, however, is the fact that you can't liquefy until you have a playset. Now, Shadowverse isn't the only game to utilize this kind of system. We see it in other digital games like Magic the Gathering Arena and Fusion World. In MTG Arena, even though you can't dust your collection, you do receive wild cards. You get them as a bonus for opening lots of packs, and you get them naturally within packs. This provides players with some level of curation that allows them to customize their gameplay experience the way they want to, even if the system still doesn't allow new players to build exactly what they want out of the gate on day one. In that vein, I actually think Master Duel does a phenomenal job of providing players with a tier 1 deck just out the gate once you get through all the play systems. And therein kind lies the issues with systems like Fusion World and now Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. You don't have the ability to curate your experience until you already own most of the cards. And this is the biggest failure of this kind of system, in my opinion. It is a system of abundance, not of curation, which in my opinion fails to do what the entire point of a crafting system is meant to do. It is a digital alternative to solve the issue that players can't trade or buy singles to build the decks they want to play. Now, does that mean you have to build a 9 legendary deck to be successful in the game? Absolutely not. We have a bunch of creators like Different Fight and Igni and a bunch of other pro players as well who have very clearly showcased that you can be successful in the game with even the most budget versions of decks, kind of like Forcecraft or Portalcraft. And if your only goal is to have a deck that you can specifically climb ladder with regardless of playstyle, then I actually think you have very little to be upset about. But I think the reality is most players aren't that player, and they actually want to engage and play with the game in the way that provides them the most fun. And that's where I think the issue lies. This system doesn't provide players with enough avenues to be able to curate their experience to play the game the way they want. Are you in love with dragons and their ramp playstyle, but the only thing you pulled were Abysscraft cards? And now you have a massive wall of 8+ legendaries preventing you from playing the deck you actually want to play? Well, tough nuggets. Hope you like Abysscraft. Now, I will say, you actually can get a decent amount of vials from the current reward systems if you stay on top of things like liquefying your premium cards and making sure that you're opening your daily packs and doing all the reward systems which directly provide you with vials. But that doesn't entirely prevent the fact that it is a hurdle to be able to play the game the way you want if your pack RNG doesn't go your way. And that's even if you're a paying player. And I think the biggest folly of this system is that it is vastly exasperated when you have more sets in the mix. Because now you're splitting your pack opening across sets and end up in kind of like a vile purgatory because you're never hitting play sets of higher rarity cards to liquefy. If a new player joins Shadowverse in 4 months and we're 3 sets deep and they need a legendary from Legends Rise, it is an incredible amount of effort to work towards 1 or 2 legendaries while also trying to get their deck cores that may exist in set 2 or set 3. Imagine wanting to build a set 3 dragon deck, but again, all you're pulling are like the set 1 abyss cards that you can't do anything with because you haven't hit that abundance to be able to liquefy them to build them towards the deck you actually want to play. So while the current system right now does reward the players who are playing out of the gate, since they can do the most to stay on top of their collections, I really am concerned for newer players who decide to jump into the game later down the road, because this system punishes them to a much more severe degree. That said, we're still only 1 week in. There's a lot of avenues for Cygames to be able to introduce new systems that we just don't even know about, that are able to help new players ramp up as new and more sets come to pass. And all that said, I do think Shadowverse Worlds Beyond is a great game. I think the game provides a lot in terms of like a holistic digital TCG experience, and I just hope a few tweaks are made here and there to be able to give the game as much runway to be as successful for as long as even the original Shadowverse was. With that said, I think it's a very nuanced conversation. I think when you have people like Dexerto saying that it costs like $500 to build the decks that you want, that's an absurdity. If you put even just $100 and you liquefy your premium and stuff like that, you should be able to build whatever you want. And I do think the ratings are kind of a shame. I do understand the review bombing is kind of the only way that players feel like they have a route to communicate with the devs in a way that they listen when it comes to the gaming industry as a whole. It is just a shame of what this could do in the long term for a game that is honestly really good. But thankfully, player numbers have been holding up firm, even if we haven't hit the peak of that 100K since launch day, but things have been looking still fine. So hopefully this is a wave that the game will be able to manage through. I am pro tweaks to the economy, but nevertheless, we'll just have to see how things go. That said, catch you guys on our next one.